You're described here, and I'm interested in this, and in the period from 1964 to 1969, during which you were the Commonwealth Solicitor General, as contributing extensively to the development of the Commonwealth's administrative law system. I'd just like to talk a little bit about that. What, to your mind, were the main contributions that you put forward?
Well, I think the establishment of what was called the Kerr Committee and the recommendations of the Kerr Committee.
And would you like to expand on that a little further to give people who might not know a great deal about your work in that time?
Yes. Well, I was, I think, responsible for persuading the then Attorney General Nigel Bowen to set up the committee. And I think the composition of the committee reflected my recommendations to him. The first thing was to, as it were, reform, I won't say reform the prerogative writs because the prerogative writs remain, but to provide easier remedial access to the courts in relation to review of administrative decisions, to set up a dual system of judicial review incorporating that new remedial system with an obligation to give reasons and access to discovery. And in addition, the big leap forward, I think, was setting up the AAT, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, as a generalist appellate tribunal for administrative decisions.
Were you, at that time, consulting with, I do recall, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of his name, there were people working strongly in administrative law in Victoria. Were you collaborating much with the other states at that time as far as the setting up, for example, of the AAT?
This was rather a federal initiative. And I think what you see, what happened really was that the states which were moving independently of each other and were at different stages of advancement ultimately came to pick up various pieces of the federal reforms and adapt them to their own purposes.
Did you find yourself thinking at any stage during those years that you wished that there was a proper national system and less of this states versus the federal side of things? Yes, because it's clunky and it's
very
duplicating.
Yeah.
And so that's why, in a sense, that impelled you, I suppose, to bring about or help bring about some of these reforms.
Yes.
Have we still a long way to go?
I think so. Well, I think so, yes. But how you do it, I think, encounters a number of hurdles. For example, just take the example that we've seen in the last 48 hours, the fallout between the federal government and the Queensland government over the development of the Alpha mine in Queensland. I mean, it's incredible that this could still occur in such a way, but it's not only occurring there, but it's occurring in case by case.
What do you feel could be done to overcome that problem? You must have developed much in the way of thinking about these things, or would what you be proposing be considered perhaps a little too unilateral?
Well, I'd be inclined myself to think the best solution to some of these problems is to give more extensive powers to the federal government, but to endeavour to devolve a good deal of what we do by way of greater regional government.
So you're almost saying two levels, two tiers of government rather than the three that we have. Right. There's been a number of people who feel the same way. Do you think we'll ever see that?
It's difficult to say that we will, because constitutional reform has proved almost impossible in this country.
With the number of referendums in which we've said no.
Exactly.
And you don't see that really changing?
Well, I don't, except I notice these days there seems to be more dissatisfaction with democracy as a form of government. And if there is growing dissatisfaction with democracy as a source of government, that leads me to believe that we may actually embrace too readily something that isn't altogether suitable.
I suppose we could always distinguish between democracy and the exercise of democracy. Maybe it's the dissatisfaction with the exercising of democracy that maybe people are expressing.
Decision-making. That's the dissatisfaction with the decision-making process of democracy. Not so much with the institution of election of representatives, although clearly enough, having regard to the way they behave, we need better representatives, and that would be the first question. How do we manage to get a better class of representatives?
It's a really hard question. There's a lovely line, and I'm sure it's not by any means an original line, but in that film that came out 10 years ago, Gladiator, where the senator character, set in ancient Rome, the actor Derek Jacobi said, "I may not be a man of the people, but I do try to be a man for the people." Do you feel that somewhere along the lines we've lost a sense of that distinction?
I do, but of course you appreciate it more when you hear the line from that wonderful voice of Derek Jacobi.
Well, it's probably one of the few lines I remember from that film. But it is nevertheless a vital distinction. I'm digressing slightly here, but when you're talking about that dissatisfaction with the quality of democracy as exercised, it has something to do with that nuance that he's describing, doesn't it? So when you took silk, I just want to step back for one moment. Had you applied many times?
No.
The first time lucky?
Yes, but you see, this was a different... I was appointed Solicitor General, and I was then a junior. Or let me say, they told me that they would appoint me as Solicitor General. I was then a junior, and they said, well, better take silk. So an arrangement was made with the New South Wales Attorney General to grant me silk. I don't think there was any question but that my standing at the time justified that course. So that's what happened.
It hasn't always been a view expressed of subsequent Solicitors General, though, has it? The right to take silk automatically. There's sometimes been a question about whether or not they should have been silk as well.
No, I don't think that's true of Solicitor General, is it?
I suppose in the case of when I interviewed Mary Gaudron, she said there was some question at the time, but that might have been because she was the first woman Solicitor General. She might have been singled out a bit for that sort of question.
Yeah, well, you may be right about that. If so, the resistance was entirely unjustified. I mean, Mary was a recognised counsel of considerable ability from an early age. Really, I can't really understand that. But you may be right.
It may have more to do with the fact that people just don't like change. Anything that's different, perhaps.
Could be.